right, we're live here at the station of Decapitation Without Your Head. I'm Nasty Neil, and I'm joined by Casey Carthew. Or do you prefer Kirsten or Casey?
I usually just go by Casey, but they're all
Oh,
my names, so yeah.
yeah, and there may be some decapitation, not to spoil the movie.
I'm into decapitation.
Excellent. You'll
Yeah.
fit right in then, yeah. So, writer and director of Polaris, which not just because you're here, I really loved Polaris. Great movie, very unique. And for people who haven't seen it yet, can you give them an idea of what it is about?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the real simple story is, first of all, it's set in this dystopian Arctic future in 2144. And the story focuses on this young girl. She's about 10. And she's been raised out in the wilderness with her mother, and they're on a journey to follow the Polaris star to basically unlock her destiny. And so that's just like this simple journey story, and then it gets these layers into it because her mother is an adopted polar bear, and this world, it's an all-female cast, and it's a sort of, I call it like Mad Max in the Arctic because it's this resource poor world, so everyone's kind of fighting to survive, and it's pretty brutal in that regard. And there are these layers of magic and fantasy in there too, and it has that epic quality of a larger sort of story. But it is that simple story at the very, very sort of base layer.
Yeah, and I love that a lot of it's not explained a lot, like why it's all, you don't see any men,
Yeah.
you don't see how we got here and stuff. But I like that about it. I think it's better a lot of times than spelling everything out for you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you think that. I know, you can only, or at least for me anyway, I don't feel like I'm making the film for everybody in the world to watch. And so, I'm hoping that those who like it a lot. And I think audiences are pretty, happy to either just jump on board and it doesn't really matter. Like, I think sometimes we get questions and we think, oh, what about this? What about this? And then, that's okay too. But I like that, it's just a ride. Movies are rides. Like, you go on them and go for the adventure, and hopefully it's a good ride for you.
By the way, Annabelle apologizes not being here. I mentioned off air, but I would like to mention for everyone watching, she wanted to be here for the interview. And I won't say, she said, I didn't want to, she's sorry she missed the all-female show, and she mentioned some other shows that she could have missed instead, but I won't say those guests.
Well, thank you, Annabelle.
Yeah.
Wait, you're here in spirit. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you said like, you make a movie not necessarily for everybody, and for me, that's what's great about like festival films is they don't fit into one genre or maybe sometimes any genre. But when you are making Polaris, did anyone be like, oh, make it more understandable or make it this way or that way?
I mean, I really feel like in this day and age, like, pretty good advice that I've been given, and whether it works for you or not, I'll just share. I mean, I feel like what sort of works for me will work for other people. It might not work for everyone, and I don't think it's the goal to sort of please the masses. It's a relationship, it's a story that you're telling, and just like, there's some songs that everybody loves and I go, oh, that's a good song, but I don't like it. Like, so I think with the films, the Polaris film, like, it came to me, the story really came to me. It was inspired by a short film, and I really stayed in the story world and the tone of the short film, and then grew the story pretty organically from there. And I was really happy with it. And I was really excited about being able to tell it. And, I just think for so many reasons, I felt really confident that a lot of people would like the film, and probably a hybrid audience. That's really who I had in mind. Some sort of art house, cinephiles, but also some, genre cinephiles too. Like, I thought those two areas would kind of intersect, and at least I hope they would, and play in that
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. One thing I find very annoying online is people who like argue over what genre a movie is,
Right.
like is Predator a horror movie or science, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's what I like about the festivals, because they're all is everything I see at a horror festival a horror movie? No, but as long as it's kind of weird or underground or something, that's cool by me. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I like Polaris has played a lot of genre festivals, and I find even genre festivals within them, they're all quite different. But I think, you know, the programmers of most of the genre festivals, at least the ones that I've had the privilege of going to, they're just amazingly well, I'll call it well-read, like well-read moviegoers, and they have such a passion for cinema, and they're so smart, and they you know, they see something they like and know how to kind of place it within their festival. So I think they're really, you know, it's a good thing if you're not really sure about what films to watch. I do think festivals are good because the curators, I mean, they know their films. They've been going to other festivals. They have relationships with filmmakers, and they see so many films. So they kind of know what stands out for them. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think genre festivals are awesome. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, people had worse problems. It was the main thing I missed during lockdown during COVID was going to the festivals.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned the short, which I watched after watching
Oh,
Polaris.
okay.
Yeah, the fish out of water. I found it on I found it on YouTube, and when I say that, it's you have it up on YouTube. Someone didn't bootleg it and put it on YouTube. But when you made fish out of water, was your plan to like eventually make it into a feature, or was it like you made it and then you decided like, oh, you know, I could flesh this out into a feature?
Yeah, no, I think it's a pretty cool story, especially if you're, you know, I'm sure a ton of your fans out there and people watching are filmmakers. And there, where I was living in the subarctic of Canada, which if you just think of Alaska, basically that's where I was living, and it's very cold and it was wintertime. There was a really cool festival there called Dead North, and that is also a genre festival. And they had this, you know, opportunity for filmmakers to create films. They give you, you know, 5 elements. You have a limited amount of time to make a film, and you just kind of go for it and you know, see what you come up with. And I thought I would give it a try, kind of like, why not, you know? And I really love the landscape of the North in the wintertime. It's like so many different shades of white and gray, and it's a whole vibe. And the city I lived in, it already looked like the apocalypse hit it. Like there's this barge called Uranium it's just there, you know? And they're like these huge gas tanks that look like they're probably killing people. Like it's already kind of there. So that whole vibe and tone of that world, I just was able to sink into. And I guess from the point of view of writing a story, the short film, you know, you're required to work with certain pieces. So it is a little bit more abstract. And I think that it helped to create a kind of a interesting story world. And that short film, I ended up really liking it. I mean, we made it for $500. It was minus 40. I got frostbite. I almost lost a toe. Like it was,
Oh,
it was
geez.
a little insane, you know, 2.5 day shoot. And it went on to play a ton of festivals. And, you know, a thing too about genre festivals and genre fans is they're so passionate and committed, and they love their movies. And so I had so many people reach out to me and say, can you make this into a feature? And I hadn't thought about it previously. And then when I kept getting that feedback, I thought, yeah, I can. Like, of
Yeah.
course, yeah. And because there is a story there, but it's really more the story world and the tone. And that was what was really exciting for me. So that's what I thought I would try to, you know, expand and keep a story in that space. And then separately, I kind of came up with the story of the film, but the story world and some of the elements from that short film that I liked. It's kind of like the awesome thing is like take the best things that you liked from the short film and make them into a feature. And so that's how I approached Polaris.
Yeah, and sometimes when I see a feature film that's like made from a short, because sometimes a short has like is kind of a punchline kind of movie. I like to
Right.
say, you know, which your short film has a little bit of that,
Yeah.
and then when you make the feature, it's almost like 90 minutes, and then you know this pops out, and it doesn't always work. But yeah, even though like you can see it's the same world, it's much different. And I think the girl character is much different in both of them, even though they're similar in way.
Yeah, I mean, they're both young girls and they have a kind of ferociousness to them and a sweetness, but you know, they're killers. And Sumi is the name of the girl. We never know her name, but I know her name. Sumi is the name of the young girl in Polaris, and she's raised by a polar bear. A polar bear is an apex predator, so she knows how to fight, and she does fight for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, the actress Viva Lee, who when I posted this on Instagram, she said you were the best director she's ever had.
Man, Viva, if you're watching, you already know this. Viva Lee is amazing. She's just was just like a real privilege to work with as an actor. I mean, of course, we can talk about the fact that she was 11 years old and spearheading this
Wow.
film, and that is a huge undertaking. But she really just has an innate sense of herself, and she's got a really connected kind of mind body spirit relationship, and that physicality, she just really captured a polar bear. And for myself as a director, if I'm working with an actor, especially as a writer director, I mean, I know the characters pretty well. I invented them. I have an idea of how they should be directed or how the story should go. But for me, when you're working with an actor, the whole importance for me of the casting is it's kind of like me saying to you, like, hey, Neil, like, now you're going to own the character. Now you're the one who's like, it's like passing the torch. Or it's also, I feel like, being a parent. It's like, I birthed you, but now you're your own person. Like, you got to own this. And you really want to work with an actor who is going to take that on themselves, like the professionalism, the intellectual part, but the physicality, the emotional part. And I think Viva did that in such a great way. And, like, you can't just be like, hey, like, I'm a polar bear.
Yeah.
You have to, you have to find your inner polar bear. And I think we all have that inner polar bear, but she was able to tap in, in a way that was really sincere and genuine. And, at the level of acting for a film where you have to do that, kind of on command on a daily basis, there's a whole, part of it that isn't possible to improvise because it's still a film. And there's that rigor of filmmaking where you have only so much time and it's pretty cold outside and all of these things. So you really have to want it. And I think, yeah, anyways, I can go on about Viva. She's great. And I think her performance alone is one who's a filmmaker and looking for, next talent to watch for. I mean, yeah, Viva Lee is someone to work with for sure.
What was the audition like? Because if people don't know, there's no understandable, I guess is the word, dialogue in the movie.
I mean, it's primarily a non-verbal film. There's about 20 words in the whole film, and they're in 3 different fictional languages. So for the casting, say for Viva, who is playing this young polar bear cub, most of the auditions were based on the physicality. And I literally put together a package with polar bear footage and gave scenarios and asked for those to be enacted to really get a sense of somebody's physicality. And then for some of our marauder characters, who we call the Morad, sort of the bad guys who are the bad gals, a few of the lead ones we cast from stunt performers because they're doing a number of different stunts throughout the film. And so I wanted to work with stunt performers who also had acting abilities. And so we had them do monologues and all of it, but all of it was done, basically via Zoom. This was during COVID, and, we were shooting in the subarctic and everybody's kind of across Canada. And so, yeah, it was all online. And nowadays we all have a kind of ability to understand, how people are online, but still when we were casting, it's still not ideal. You want to be in person with people and kind of feed off the energy and see what that chemistry is like. But it works okay. I would do it again. It's not ideal, but for sure.
Well, what is the actual, what's the script like? Since, there is no real dialogue in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, the very first draft of the script, not the very first, but the sort of first draft that I shared with funders was about 18 pages. It was really short. And one of the things I'm proud of though is like it was a really good read, and nobody really read it and was like, I don't know if this can be a feature. And the final shooting script was 55 pages because we did go back and we did put the fictional languages. We wrote the fictional languages into the script so that the actors would have them. So they actually are speaking a language. It's created, but it's not random.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a pretty short script. I mean, when you have dialogue on the page, the page counts just grow and grow and
Right.
grow. And it gets, it's one thing to watch a scene that doesn't have dialogue on it, but to read it on the page, I think you have to be really slick with your words, because that can get really boring to read really quickly. So a scene, that's really momentous, even if you look in scripts from other movies where it's, it's about a kind of eye lock kind of, it's like 1 minute and we're on somebody's face. Like you can't, you don't write on the page, we're on their face for 1 minute and it's intense as hell. Like it's just, you kind of have to one line and then you move on. So I think it's an interesting script, not because I'm a particularly great writer or something, but I think it's an interesting script to look at for that exact reason of how you translate a nonverbal like film basically from script to screen, and you see how it worked or didn't work, but you at least have that as an example.
Yeah. So when you said like you actually start to write out the lines, the dialogue for, in these other languages, like and they're all not only are they different language, but they're spoken in like different ways, so how much of that is in the script? And how much of that is like just when you're on set, like trying to figure out how they're going?
Yeah, no, it's all in the script. But in terms of how it worked, in terms of the process, the intention had always been to have a bit of a background in improv, and something I always like about improv is like, you find the words, or you find the character in your body, or at least that's one approach. And I really, at first I thought, oh, I want to create this whole language and talk to linguistic experts. And then I thought, realistically, for an actor to be speaking with authority in a language that isn't theirs is a challenge, even for, the top actors of the world. And for me, the importance, this film is in, as I say, it's not like drinking wine, smoking cigarettes at a cafe in France. Like this is really action oriented. So what somebody means, even if you don't understand the exact words. There's a scene where Sumi escapes. It's not giving anything away. And, people are yelling, like, they're yelling something like, get the prisoner, or like, there's that urgency,
Right.
And so we worked with the actors to create like tones and sounds and feeling it out. And then develop like co-created the language together. So the idea was that we would know what the language sounds like, so that if anybody couldn't remember their line per se, they would remember how to speak in that language. So if you just think, tonally, if you listen to Mandarin, or if you listen to French, or you listen to Hungarian, or whichever language it is, you don't, like, if you don't speak those languages, you might not know what's being said, obviously, but you kind of know, oh, that's sounding kind of French, or, that's sounding Spanish. Like, you can kind of guess the tone. And so for the Morads, they're really guttural. Like they don't speak a lot. It's always kind of angry, and it's like, like it's coming literally from their gut. And so, if a Morad were to be like, da, 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 like you're like, that's not in this story world. So it just is a bit more of an intuitive approach to, world creation, and making it easier for actors, because you don't want to be the actor who's like, get the prisoner, but you're like, like and you can't do, when you're filming in the cold, you can't do tons of takes. You kind of have to get it in the moment. And the more you can support and prepare your actors and help them, like by, making it easier for them, because it's already hard enough. I think, I just think that's a smart thing to do.
Now, are you from Canada? Or are you used to, maybe not the subarctics, but are you used to the cold?
I am used to the cold. I've had the privilege of living in a lot of countries, including the U.S. But even for Canadians, I've lived in the subarctic, up in the Northwest Territories, where fish out of water was shot. So I'm used to it, and I think people who are used to working in the cold just are used to not complaining about it. But we still we still feel it. We still feel it. But you know how to dress for it and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll talk more about the cold minute, but Christopher Osgood, what inspired you to write this story? Now you mentioned earlier Polaris was inspired by the short, but what inspired you to write the short?
Well, I can speak a bit about like the inspiration for the polar bear like girl relationship. So for me, I basically grew up in a lot of different sort of natural settings, and I always loved nature, and I always loved stories. There's like Romulus and Remus. There are the Jungle Book stories, like stories about humans and animals and that kind of relationship. And I always loved animals. It's like if you have a dog or a cat, like you speak to your dog or your cat, you have that relationship. And so that was always really important to me. And I really love the night sky. And the night sky is really phenomenal in the wintertime in the north. That's where we have the northern lights, and they're out every day. And they're very, even though they're based in science, they're very magical. Like you're like, oh, there's something else. There's something else to it. And the constellations, like in Greek mythology, everyone sort of points to the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. And the Big Dipper is that Ursa Major, which means the big water bear, which is the polar bear, and then Ursa Minor is the little polar bear. And I thought, oh, that's it. Like this is the story. There's something here about this girl and this bear. And the other thing, and it's a real kind of, I guess, feminist lens, but it's like a humanist lens to wear, because I think this is just makes the world better for everyone. But so many of the constellation backstories are because some male god, usually Zeus, ravished, what maybe one would call raped, like a woman, and hid her in the skies to hide the affair from his jealous wife. And it's like, come on, like, we can reimagine new stories for these
Yeah, right,
constellations,
yeah.
So in many ways, I think Polaris is a reimagining of how the Little Dipper found her home in the sky. So those were kind of some, that's a bit where the story came from, because that's basically how the story opens and ends.
Yeah. Annabelle and I are both in New England, but not quite subarctic. But I
No,
do
you get a
feel
lot of
weak now.
snow.
It gets cold here, but not quite that cold.
Yeah. No, it definitely gets cold, but not that kind of endless cold.
Yeah. How about actually shooting with a polar bear? What is that experience like?
Yeah, so there's only one professional polar bear in North America.
All right.
Yeah, and
She
on it,
must get a lot of work. Yeah.
yeah,
Or
she
she, I don't
really
know.
does
Oh,
any.
interest. So it was all female then. Yeah, it was
It
a
was,
female.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I was like, that's great. Like, no swinging polar bear dicks on set. Like we just had a luck with that, and we also had the luck that she's Canadian, because on our on an indie budget, like you can't just be flying polar bears all over the place. And but interestingly, she's been working for 27 years. She's been a professional actress since she was a cub, and she loves to act. And we were filming during COVID, and she'd been out of work for a year at that point. And for her, working's a great gig. She gets to go on adventures. She gets treated really well and all of these things. So she was pretty excited to come to work. We rented a small airport hangar, created basically like an enclosed space, a green screen space, and we filled it with special snow. It's not just biodegradable, but it's edible, because she would eat the snow. And she came in, and like day one, her trainer Mark was like, "Oh, she can be a diva," and you could hear her thrashing in her trailer. She basically has a horse trailer, and she just sounded kind of angry and like intense, like. And you just use this electronic fence, so it's pretty, it doesn't look so, it's totally safe, but it's a very fine line. It's like fishing line. And anyway, she came out of the trailer, and she just saw the snow, and like the opening scene of the film where she's just rolling in the snow, happy. She was just happy. She was happy to be there, happy to be on set, happy to be working. And honestly, like her bread and butter is, I think, car commercials where she's not in snow. So it's like, because they like the juxtaposition of pulling around a highway, but here she was rolling around in the snow and getting fed all sorts of food. And like she was awesome. And we only filmed her with her trainer. She doesn't, it's not ethical, but anyway, she never, is in the scene with an actor. That's all done in post. Yeah.
Yeah. The opening scene's really beautiful, and I
Mm.
like the contrast of there's a lot of beauty in the movie, and then a lot of brutality, and a lot of the beauties with when either with the actual animals or people being animalistic, but the people are the brutes of the movie.
Yeah, well, that's the whole part of it. Like this world is a world gone to shame, a world of neglect, and it really is. From our present day world, there are all these themes around environmental kind of stewardship there. But I mean, I think one of the takeaways that I would hope is just being able to see this beauty and be reminded that that is part of our world. And when you see something you love, you usually want to share it. And I just think bringing that imagery to the forefront is really helpful, because as you say, like you're in New England, you get a lot of snow but not a lot of polar bears walking
Yeah.
around, and all of that stuff. So yeah, the people are more brutal because we've created a world that way, and this isn't all female cast. It's the world we see on screen is all female, but it's very brutal. Like it's and that was intentional. I didn't want to have, one of the reasons to have an all female cast was just like, why not? Like women kick ass, have them do stunts. It's going to be fun and amazing. But also, I wanted to talk about that brutality. And if I'd brought men into it, like there'd be this automatic conversation about
Yeah,
like the
it's a different,
brutality
yeah.
of men, like as a gender.
Because
And
even though the movie's it's definitely not like anti-men in any
no,
way,
no, no, no,
or
no.
that all women are are fantastic or something. Yeah.
It really
Right.
is kind of pointing the finger at humanity, like all gender, and I think by just focusing on one, that then it's sort of an open critique of everybody. But if I brought men into it, I think it would have turned into what you were talking about. It would have looked like pointing the finger at men, and it's not about that. It's a human problem and human solution. So that was another reason for an all-female cast. Yeah.
And how about the other animals in the movie? Because there's more than just the polar bears. Great performance by the dog. I don't know if it's a dog or a wolf.
Are you a dog lover? Yeah.
I'm an animal lover in general.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. All female dogs. The dogs. So where we filmed in the Yukon, there are a lot of dogs, and a lot of husky dogs. And the dog we had, I call her Two Eyes. She has one blue eye and one, I think, kind of
My
browny yellow. Yeah,
Oddly enough, my brother, who's not a husky, he's
yeah.
a person, but he has the same deal. He has two different
Ah,
colored eyes. Yeah.
okay. Oh, cool. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, the dog in the film, she had a sort of a even bigger role to play in the script, but in the edit, we took some of the scenes out, that were hard to take out, because I'm a huge animal lover, and I love seeing her in there. But yeah, she's just this wonderful character. She's sort of also hostage of the Morads, and she's trying to help this young girl Sumi to the best of her ability, like and I think it's a really sweet relationship. But yeah, I mean, working with animals is always a pleasure, and then there are a lot of logistics involved, and it takes time, and you can't sort of have the same expectations of animals that you can of humans, obviously. And I've worked with bunnies before, and wolves, and other bears, and like they're very smart, but like you have to just do it on their terms, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Pepe, one of our regular listeners, R.I.P. to my dog Flu, who passed away yesterday. We were sorry to hear
Oh,
that.
I am sorry to hear that. Yeah. Mm.
Christopher, must have been really challenging to film the pure white of the snow landscape. Can you explain some of the challenges and how you overcame them?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot about filming in snow, particularly, on an indie film where you have a limited number of days. So you have to be really smart and simple with your setup. So a lot of it is carving out the light. And so a lot of it is really blocking the light and bouncing the light. And it is tricky to do when you have really sunny days, of which we had a number of. A nice thing about the winter light is it kind of goes like around, if that makes sense. It doesn't sort of go over top, so it doesn't necessarily cast the really big dramatic shadows, but it is tricky. And I think we had an excellent DOP and camera operator. But a lot of it, to be honest, you have to know ahead of time, like you do your camera tests with the snow, you develop your LUT, which is kind of like your lighting palette, and you get that intact. But you're always going to have to kind of do some corrections in post, because some days the snow is it's just too bright, and you have to decide always in the frame, like, what's the most important thing, what are we focusing on? And snow is hard, and like footprints are hard. There's always somebody who like needed to cut through the clean, fresh snow.
Right.
So I think you can do things ahead of time. Like as a director, I look even to directors like Steven Spielberg, who he's like just tilting the camera up just a little bit, and it creates a kind of a mood. But also from a practical point of view, it's like you're not really seeing the feet so much, so you're not having to see the snow so much. So I think there are tricks you can do, and then I think you want to be careful about your color palettes and with your production design and your wardrobe and things like that. But it is tricky. But
Yeah. And it makes when a character pops up, it's in the trailer. When you see the green armor, that really pops because it's like the first hint of color in the movie.
Yeah, exactly. It is a pretty monochromatic palette. That's very much intentional. And that's something that, I really had to be clear about from the beginning. That's not something you can kind of come back to and post, even if you had all the money. Like you can't hone in on every costume and everything to create that. So I think just being really intentional about what you want to do. And yeah.
Do you have a lot of background in filming, like action scenes and fights?
No, I was so excited for Polaris because I grew up on a lot of action movies, like all the James Bond, MacGyver, Knight Rider, like all of these like shows, and I really, really wanted to do stunts. The reality is, they're expensive and require not just being safe, but you need to have the crew, the stunt choreographer. You need to have the kind of the people and the expertise. So you need to have a good enough budget, even on an indie shoot, to have that. So with Polaris, we shrank our stunts budget, 20 times less than what I wanted it to be, but I'm still really grateful that we were able to pull it off. But no, I didn't have a lot of experience. I had some experience with fight scenes, but nothing like no explosions, no pulls, like things like that, which, I think they're super fun to do. But they're technical, and especially in the winter, you need to be safe, and you have to think about snow, and you can't make a big mess because it's pure, the story world, so I would love. And in fact, I'm hoping that I'll still be able to kind of grow that skill set.
Yeah, honestly, movie looks awesome, and I know it's an independent movie, so it doesn't have a huge budget, but it looks like it does. And,
Great.
and I imagine, I saw it on my computer, but I would love to have seen it on the big screen. I think it's the best way to see any movie, but especially a very visual movie.
Yeah, and this has these sort of epic nature shots too, so it does make sense. But honestly, anywhere you can see it, I feel like there's so many movies out there. I watch movies on my phone all the time, and I get it. It doesn't feel sort of the way it should be seen, but better to see it there than,
Yeah, than not see it at all, right? Yeah.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And nowadays it's great with all the rise of the streaming sites and platforms. We get to see a lot of. We talked about, it's cool to go to festivals, but not everyone can go to a festival. So now a lot of the festival almost not all of them, but most of the festival movies end up, on a platform somewhere. So we get to see a lot of stuff that before might have just vanished.
Well, Polaris right now just speaking on that note,
Yeah,
is
Kristen.
available like wherever you watch movies in the US. Thanks for your question. Yeah, it's on Amazon, iTunes, Tubi, like everyone. I was just everywhere. I shouldn't say our US distributors have done a great job in getting it, out everywhere. So it should be easy to find this week because now it's out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I really recommend it. Again, not just here. I really dug it. I will say at the very beginning, I actually checked though. I was like, "Oh, do I not have my closed captioning on?" And then I realized it
Yeah.
was no. But you exactly what you said earlier. Not just to say what you said, but you understand what people are talking about without knowing exactly what they're saying.
Yeah, like if somebody's mad at you in any language,
Right?
you know.
Yeah. How about just making some of the cool things like the different armors cool? I actually really like Shumi's, like her hand claws. I think they're really cool.
Yeah, we worked with a really cool team called the Blood Brothers. You can check them out, Blood Brothers. They are as cool as they sound, and they do everything from kind of all the pyrotechnics. They created a lot of the armor, and obviously they do blood, and they do a lot of kind of effects. But they're these just really talented people who are also like, really specific about like where everything comes from. So these claws that Sumi has, it's like a sealed jawbone because it's meant to be like, well, where would she have come across such a fighting tool? And it's like polar bears eat seals, so that all makes sense. So she has these seal weapons that look like tiger claws you see from a lot of martial arts films. So that was kind of the intention. She has these claws inside of her hands. The Yukon, it's a really cool place like Alaska, where a lot of things like metal objects, you just have these huge scrap yards. Nobody's kind of moving things from Alaska down to the southern states, so there are a lot of scraps, and that is a part, I think, why I think of this story world a bit like Mad Max. Is it's really that DIY culture. So you just, you find things and you use them. And in this story world, it kind of looks like it's from the past, but if you see all the artifacts in the film, it's all cars, and then it's a plane, and then it's like an observatory. It's all stuff from our present or slightly kind of ahead. And that's all that metal stuff, that stuff survives the apocalypse. Like that stuff is just there. So we actually went to the scrapyard and we found a lot of the elements there. And then, they were created into weapons or wardrobe or sets, and that, they were safety. But yeah, it's really from the story world and from the location. Yeah.
Bruno says he loved Polaris. Great movie.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Bruno.
Dean says he's going to check it out.
Wicked. Thanks, Gene.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
one thing I think sometimes overlooked in like gore scenes or violent scenes is the audio, and you have some very cool sounds during some of the gore scenes, which it just
Wow.
makes it really elevates them.
I'm glad. I love sound design. I'm glad you're picking up on the sound. It's that's really the reason to see a movie in a theater, is for the sound experience that like your phone just, I mean, my phone, I have a good phone. It just can't deliver
Yeah.
on that kind of surround and all the different layers. But yeah, that's a big part of the film. So I'm glad you picked that up on your screen.
Yeah. I just want to mention Muriel, as I think her name's Dee in the
Yeah.
movie. I thought she was great, and when you first like meet her and she meets Shumi, kind of reminded me of Bride of Frankenstein when Frankenstein comes to
Oh,
the
I
blind
hadn't
man's
thought of
house.
that. I can kind of see that. It's growing in my head. Yeah, Muriel is just a lovely human being. She's a phenomenal actor, And I think she would love that comment. So I'm going to email her tonight.
Oh, okay, very cool. She's great in the movie. Yeah, everyone really is. Honestly, I thought it was great. A weird question, but did the lack of dialogue actually did that help like other festivals in other parts of in other countries?
I think so. Like, I mean, as a filmmaker, I thought, oh, this will be great because nobody has to do the subtitles or anything like that. It festivals are great because you can kind of not override the distributor, but they, as you say, like they find that interesting because they don't get a lot of nonverbal film submissions. So from a curation perspective, I think they think that's a cool element. I do think that the good people who work in sales get concerned that people will want the dialogue because somebody has to get over what you had, which was like, oh, am I looking for the subtitles or not? So I think even our sales agent sort of wisely pointed out, oh, maybe we need to just have this like disclaimer saying like this is intentional so that you can just like relax and be like, oh, I don't need to do something to figure it out. But certainly the nonverbal aspects, yeah, people like that. People like that everybody kind of sees the same movie.
Yeah. So it premiered at Fantasia Fest, which is one of the biggest genre festivals. What were
Amazing.
some of the other? What was that experience like watching it for the first time, with an audience?
Watching it for the first time with a big audience, or with any audience. I went from COVID on my computer
Right.
to this theater, and Fantasia, as you know, it's just an awesome festival. Montreal's a great city, and Fantasia films and the audiences are amazing. They just are like they live up to the hype, and also it was the first time our cast and crew were seeing the film. So I was pretty nervous. I was really excited. Like it was really nice to see everyone. And it's such a huge honor to open Fantasia. Like I still am I will forever be like so proud and honored by that. But it was an amazing experience. Like it was very positive and fun. And I was sitting next to Viva, who plays Sumi, and her mother. And I looked over, and at the end, like they were crying and they weren't saying anything. And I was like, oh, like maybe they didn't like the movie and
Yeah.
this stuff. But yeah, like mom was crying. She's just so proud of her daughter. And like she even told me, she's like, I didn't even see her as my kid at one point. Cause I was like, there's the end fight scene where I won't give it away, but like it's not looking good for Sumi. It really isn't looking good for her. And like I just thought, mom's not happy about this movie anymore. Because when you see everything put together on the screen, it really tells a more kind of gruesome story and just visual. So, but no, they were all into it. So it was just like a total perfect night.
And what were some of the other festivals that you got to attend that it played?
Yeah, a few that really stood out, Sitges, which is in Spain. Wow. I mean, the entire town of Sitges, like they're dressing up like zombies, and like you see 2-year-olds walking around with machetes and like I can't even explain it, but if you ever really want to just like go, it's like Halloween but for a town. And I can't remember, Sitges is sort of like the end of September, beginning of October. It's 100% worth the trip, like to go there. That was really a very special screening. And it's so awesome. Like you can go to another country and people can watch your film and have such an enthusiasm. And as we all know, like again, genre lovers they're just the best. Like that, there's no other, they're the best. And so Sitges was really quite great. I missed going to Beyond Fest in LA, but I was really not jealous isn't the right word, but I really did want to go
Yeah.
there. Um, and there were festivals I went to. I went to Reykjavik in Iceland, and I'd never been to Iceland before. And the story world is very sort of similar. I mean, the landscape's completely different, but that, it's called Iceland. Like it's a winter familiar world. So that was pretty great. And I don't know. I feel like those were the ones that really stood out, but we've been very, very fortunate with Polaris. It really has played at a lot of festivals. Viva has won a number of awards for her performance, which is
Very
just excellent.
Congratulations, Eve, if you're watching.
Yes, Viva, and from all over the world. Really, it's quite awesome, and other people on our crew as well, our cinematographer and our VFX, and like I don't know, I we've been very, very lucky, and now we're out in the U.S., and
Yeah.
what an awesome experience that is as well.
Yeah. So hope people check it out. Where can people go to find? Well, you said it's on all the main major sites,
It's
Tubi,
on
and
it's
yeah,
on all platforms. It opened in theaters last week, but I'm not sure. I know it was in Los Angeles, and I'm not sure where to go if you want to see it in the theaters right now. I feel like we could both Google it at the same time and figure that out. But it should be on all platforms, and it's a short title, Polaris, and it's the girl and the polar bear.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You won't get it confused with another movie. I don't think, anyway. Chris does want to know what movies are you looking forward to seeing?
What movies am I looking forward to seeing? Oh my goodness. Gosh, I really apologize. My mind just went blank.
Yeah,
Um, I'm a big fan of No Surprise, like big movies with big story worlds. And so I'm excited for the holidays coming up because they're starting to kind of pump out some movies, also on TV. Gosh, yeah. I'll just be lost in space thinking about this. I did recently rewatch some films like Videodrome. I don't know if you
oh,
guys
I'm
are.
I'm a big fan of it. That was one I
Yeah,
rented a lot on VHS as a young man. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So I just
I haven't
rewatched.
rewatched it since I was an adult, though. I don't think.
The themes are all holding up, and like some things you're kind of like, but there's an aesthetic there that is, I think, is just transcends it all. Like it's gonna be good for forever. But yeah, I mean, one of my favorite movies when I was a kid was Wizard of Oz. Like I like movies across genres. Yeah, for all sorts of different reasons, as I'm sure you all do too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was cool when I was a kid. Like, I guess maybe you could have bought on VHS, but it'd just come on once a year, and it was always exciting for it to come on TV.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. So Polaris, just go. Where can people follow it to see what you're up to or the movies and
Yeah,
stuff?
so I mean, I have to do a better job of being more visible. I usually just try to like, focus on
Yeah,
on the film, but as everyone knows, you got to be visible. So you can, search me. I'm on Instagram, Kirsten Carthew, Casey Carthew. That's the platform I use the most, but I don't really use it that much. So I will grow that. And yeah, Polaris is literally on all platforms. We have a great team. We're working with Epic Pictures, and they are the ones who are pumping it across the platforms and working with their partners. And I think it should be easy to find. I anytime I Google it now, which I'm doing frequently just to see where it is, it
yeah,
seems
yeah,
to be everywhere. So
yeah,
yeah, look for it. And if you like it, like, please say that.
yeah. And if not,
Somewhere.
just keep it to yourself. Right, right.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
And
Yeah, but
would
if you don't, you can keep that. No, it's
yeah,
whatever, whatever. It's everyone has the right to feel and
sure.
do what they want. Yeah.
Would you revisit this world?
Oh, like in another film or
And
something?
yeah.
Yeah, I actually like my vision for the story was a three-parter, which we're like it's just I grew up on fantasy novels that, they're like thousands of pages. So I really saw Polaris, this Polaris section is the middle story. It's not even like the mothership, but it's the middle story. And so the first story in the trilogy, that would be the story that tells you about what happened, all the way up to Sumi kind of being adopted and found by the mama polar bear. So that would be the kind of intro to the Polaris. And then the Polaris story is the bridge, because then the next story would be following a character who I call Frozen Girl, but who's basically Sumi's friend in the film, who we meet in the second half of the film, and following her story and understanding where she comes from, because she clearly doesn't come, like she's not wearing enough clothing to come from the cold world. Like
Right.
she comes from somewhere else, and she's there for a reason. And she's going off to find out, like who put her there. And she's taking her knowledge she's learned from Sumi, and she's going to forge forward and, start her own thing. It's like a much bigger story world. So yeah, I would absolutely return to it. In fact, I would love to do it as a whole comic series. So if
Oh,
anybody
cool.
has those skills, like let me know. It's an amazing story world, because it goes all over the place.
Yeah, no, I could totally see that. Now you mention it, and
Yeah.
obviously you're here to talk about Polaris, but are you working on anything currently?
Yeah, the next I talk about it in terms of story worlds. The next story world I'm exploring is underwater. For the most part, I've always been a water baby, and been training with my free training and or free diving, and yeah, just exploring. Kind of, it's an action thriller that's set out sort of in the water. So there's a lot of stunts to come in that film, which I'm excited for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't easy, and it wasn't easy enough filming in the snow. Let's go underwater. Yeah.
I mean, taking a break from winter,
Right.
and into new challenges. But you everyone who works in film, or I'm sure in other areas too, but you do something, it's really hard, and you think, oh, I'm never going to do that again, except maybe tomorrow. Like I will start, So you just if it's in you, it's in you, and you just want to do more of it. And I like this story world too. Yeah, so all those kind of films too, epic underwater films, let's call it like Jaws, anything from that moving forward. Yeah.
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 I live not far from where they filmed Jaws.
Okay. Yeah. Like
Big
your
fan of
whole
Jaws.
life, like as a child?
Yeah. I live on. I don't know if you know where Cape Cod is, but it's
Yeah.
near the islands where they filmed Jaws.
Great. So
Yeah.
you'll I track those sharks. There's a research company called OSearch, just to plug them, but they track the white sharks that go from kind of Canada down through the States, and it's pretty fascinating. Yeah, there are definitely sharks about.
Yeah, I know there was one that they've like followed it. It's like over 600 years old, which is really
Oh,
wild to think about. I
wow.
don't know, maybe it's not a great white, but it's a shark, and it's
That's
like
a respect. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
it's very wild to think about. Well, I really love Polaris, and this was really fun to talk with you.
Neil, it's a total pleasure, and thanks to all of anyone watching. Check out Polaris, and let me know what you think.
Yeah, and I'd love to do this again sometime when the
I would love
underwater
that.
movie's
I
out.
would love
Yeah,
that.
all right, sounds good. All right, we're gonna play music of the month, the Atomic Psychos, and then and I'll see everybody next week. Thank you.
Thanks.
My mystery's out of sight. Sleeping on to one fight. Breathing in front of the screaming out. Oh, and off we
this is Nasty Neil after credits. Thanks again to KC for coming on to talk about Polaris. I was a big fan. Annabelle's under the weather. Troy's not here. So instead of me just yapping to myself for a little while, I'm going to head out. But we'll be back next week. And we'll be having some guests on the show. I'm not sure yet. I actually think the Atomic Psychos might be on here next week to talk with us, and maybe some other cool guests. So what you do is you go over to withoutyourhead.com/group/withoutyourheadhorror, and you see what we're up to. You can follow Without Your Head on all the social medias, on the Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Threads. I believe Dean Machino has us up on the Grinder. I don't know. You can follow these things. For people who didn't notice, I was trying to think of post-apocalyptic film, what shirt I could wear. I actually don't have a Mad Max shirt that fits me anymore. I had a 3X1, but I'm a smaller man now. This is actually a medium. I'm kind of proud of this. Planet of the Apes. So that's a pretty rocking sweater from the good people of Middle Beyond. Also coming up, speaking of the winter, we will be having the Winter Warlock, our 15th Without Your Head presents Severed Limbs. That's coming up in January. So send in your shorts, send in your trailers. That'll be a good time. Boom. All right. So next week, I know Jen Wexler will be on the show soon. That's very exciting. Coming up in 2024, we have already booked a guest. I believe that's on the group. So you go join the group, find out who. And we want to start doing the Secret Satan gift exchange. So if you would like to help out covering the cost of the shipping, hit me up. I'd be happy to put up banners or something if you have something to plug. But if you can't do that, it's totally fine. You can still send in a gift. You can send that in anytime to Neil Jones, P.O. Box 415, Sandwich, Mass. 02563. Just make sure to put something in the package so I know it is for Secret Satan gift exchange. All right, we'll be back next week. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And we'll be sending out the gifts very soon for the Halloween contest because Annabelle may be contributing a little something. So I want to get everything together and send them out. All right. Bye, everybody.